1 exterior. Destroyed husk of Edie Groceries. Smoke and dust billow from the rubble that used to be Edie Groceries. All around is black, soot, and death, stretching as far as the eye can see. Or at least for as long as the dimensions of the ex-grocery store allow. A lone figure walks among the wreckage, casting a glance downwards. This is her job, to clean up the mess from events such as this, but that doesn't mean she likes it. She sighs deeply, the wind whistling mournfully through her black locks. I am so tired.
Yabba dabba do!
Jamesons, meet the Jamesons, they're the modern suburban family. From the Edie Valley, they're a house right down on William Street. Let's ride in the family minivan, wave hi to every neighbor that we can. When you're with the Jamesons, have a yabba dabba do time, a dabba do time. We'll have a straight old time.
2 interior. The Jameson living room. James Jameson is sitting on the living room couch, watching the news, which comes on after the Vala Hills episode of the day.
Good afternoon, Edie Valley. I'm Scott Sterling.
That's right, Scott. A series of unfortunate events has occurred over the past few days. 2 local children, a young boy and a young girl, were brutally murdered after their parents were found dead in the Freak Edie Groceries fire. The killer is still on the loose, but witnesses say they saw a large man in a top hat flee the scene. If you see anyone that matches this photo, please contact the local authorities.
Hold on, it looks like our reporter on the scene has finally gotten an interview with a witness. Over to you, Aloria.
3 exterior street. A woman dressed in black, wearing a copious amount of eyeliner, holds a microphone, looking into the camera. She looks like she would rather be anywhere else right now. Next to her is a plump man with a backwards hat, a plaid button-up shirt, and jeans, who has a rather stern look on his face. His hands are shiny, as if he's wearing transparent gloves. Well, Scott, I'm standing here, as you can plainly see, with the witness in question. Mr. Bamford, please tell us about what you saw the Edie murderer do.
Well, I saw the man come out of the Bimmy home, holding this here gun. He hid it under a dumpster nearby, and walked away. I didn't know what in the world happened, but those poor kids.
Mr. Bamford pulls a pistol from his holster, which he conveniently owns, wiping his eyes on his other hand, though it doesn't seem there is anything to rub off. Oh, quit your whining. Back to you, Scott. 4 interior newsroom.
Thank you, Aloria. Now with that out of the way, it's time for Tom with the weather.
The screen cuts to a man in a plain suit, holding a long, thin stick he seems to have found on the ground somewhere.
Well, Scott, the weather looks to be especially blurry to read, since Monday has some weird particles falling rapidly around it.
That's rain.
No, it's some computer-generated particles on the screen, Scott. If it was rain, my stick would be wet. It's pretty dry.
Tom proceeds to jab Monday several times with the stick, knocking over the screen that the weather was being projected onto.
Oh, for the love of God.
5 interior, the Jameson living room. James finally leaves his couch, scratching his back.
Hey, Betty, where do we keep our board games?
Betty's voice comes from the direction of the kitchen.
James, for the last time, we are not playing Jenga.
It's not about that. I just need to know where they are. Though I do wish you'd play Jenga with me.
The basement next to the fuse box. You think you'd remember, considering you're the only one who plays those things.
6 exterior, the Jameson backyard. James has made a fire with the leaves around the backyard. He pulls out a Monopoly board game and proceeds to throw it into the fire. He has tears in his eyes.
I trusted you, Uncle Pennybags. And you turned out to be a murderer. I trusted you. I let you into my home. I let you meet my children. I left you alone with my wife. You bastard. You bastard.
James dramatically gets on his knees and shouts up into the sky.
Why?
7 interior, the Jameson living room, 30 minutes later. James is peering out the window with a pair of discount binoculars he salvaged from the wreckage of Edie Groceries. His gaze is focused on the Prescott house, or at least as much of it as he can see, since his view was somewhat blocked by the decorations he put outside a few days ago. Betty is cleaning the living room, making sure things are absolutely spotless. Dirt stains her pink apron, which she uselessly tries to clean.
Those damned Prescotts with their fancy house. Must take them a lot of room to fit their egos, right, hon?
Honey, are you gonna look at the Prescott's house all night, or you gonna help me with the snacks? Today is a big day, and I can't prep everything myself. Also, they have the same exact house we do.
It's exactly 1 square inch larger than ours.
Everyone here has the same house. Stop grasping at straws.
Can't you just have the kids come over and help? They got nothing better to do.
I'd really love to do that, hun. I really would. But I told you 5 times yesterday that they would be spending the night at some school lock-in.
You know you can't interrupt a man when he's watching his soaps.
Betty rolls her eyes, her pupils at risk of never coming back after spending so much time looking inside her skull. James puts the binoculars back. The Jamesons are hosting a party over nothing in particular, but James, for some unknown reason, wants to make it spooky-themed. Everyone in the neighborhood is invited, from the Swansons to the Albertsons, all the way to the Montgomerys, who were most likely never going to show up after what happened a few months ago involving a book club, a lustful wife of the apocalypse, and a painful hospital visit.
I had to know who the killer was. They killed off my favorite character, you know? It was an emotional time.
I wasn't interrupting a man. I was interrupting a bawling child.
Same thing.
Just then, the quarrel is interrupted by someone knocking at the door. The first guest has arrived.
Answer the door, will ya?
James walks over to the door, almost tripping on one of the many jack-o'-lanterns around the house, which are there for no specific reason except to stick to the theme, and opens the door. In the doorway are Todd Swanson and his wife Laurel, who is wearing a black and blue dress. Or is it white and gold? Todd holds a picnic basket full of orange-flavored Aunt Marma's totally not rubber schmutzy trolls.
Well, hey there, James.
Todd, Yanny, come in.
My name is Laurel.
Yeah, whatever you say, dear.
The couple enters the quaint residence and Betty grabs the basket from Todd, putting it on the overly decorated table. She almost knocks over the Jameson family photo album, which is used only to show the Jameson teens how they looked in the tub as children, to emphasize that somewhere in their upbringing they strayed horribly far from the pristine path Betty had planned for them.
Well, that's probably all of the people that are going to come. We won't even have to use the chairs. Everyone can sit on the couch.
Now, hon. We're getting a lot more people than that. Well, if the news didn't scare everyone off.
Oh, gee. Yeah, there's nothing scarier than Halloween. Jack-o'-lanterns, skeletons, kiddos knocking on your door and asking for candy. Nothing rattles my bones more. Good thing this isn't a Halloween party, though with your decor it's almost indistinguishable from one.
Yeah, it's almost like the scriptwriters wanted to make this into a Halloween special, but didn't get into it until January.
What?
What? Oh, speaking of skeletons, the dough should be coming over any minute now.
James hurries to the window to check if anyone else is coming. He sees Todd's minivan parked right next to his own in front of the house, despite the fact Todd only lives about 3 feet away. Right next to them is an extremely plain-looking minivan. That's the Dough-mobile. But where are the Doughs? James looks out the window at an angle to see the small porch that leads to their front door, and there the Doughs are, just standing there. This is a common occurrence whenever the Doughs visit, which makes James thankful they RSVP'd beforehand. He walks over to the door to greet both Bob Dough and Sayori Dough. Both of them are wearing plaid, which really brings out their personalities.
Hello, I have brought a bag of candy corn. It is very tasty. I have brought a bowl of salad to go with my significant other's bag of triangular orange and white pieces of wax-textured candy.
Sayori's arms shoot forward, almost hitting James in the gut with the bowl of salad, which is really just a bunch of lettuce. He has learned not to question the Dough family's interpretation of what a salad is.
All right, well, come in, you two, and put your food on the table. It's time for my daily ritual.
James walks up to an old urn on a pedestal, which is in front of a large portrait of Uncle Vincent. He pats the urn gently.
You know, Uncle Vincent here liked Halloween. He said it was the best holiday of the year. That was before a gang of trick-or-treaters pelted him to death with toilet paper. Poor Uncle Vincent. Pastrami? Yeah, pastrami. This party is in his memory. To honor his memory, of course, Betty. It's only right that we honor the dead, especially your brother.
Why do we have that put up again? It's not like he ever visited.
To honor his memory, of course, Betty. It's only right that we honor the dead, especially your brother.
We don't have an urn for your brother. We don't have an urn for my great-grandmother. And we don't have an urn for your childhood pet dog. Why don't we honor their deaths too? Why is my brother so important to you? You didn't even know him. You can't even get his last name right.
Betty would have continued to grill her husband about many different things as their neighbors watched in quiet amusement, but she doesn't get the chance as there is another knock on the door.
Oh boy, that must be the Albertsons. Albert texted me a bit ago saying he was on his way.
Why didn't you tell us?
James happily leaves the urn like it was never there in the first place and goes to open the door. A very rotund man stands in the doorway holding a plate of homemade butterscotch brownies. His bright red shirt is almost blinding, but it's a lovely sight in the rather dim evening. His name is Albert Albertson, the resident heart and soul of the street. Accompanying him are John and Carol Norman, barely visible from behind him, who are holding some gluten-free candy, unwrapped to make sure none of the candies have razors in them, and some apples. John is the sheriff for the local police department, while Carol is a reporter for the Daily Bugle. She is barely ever seen away from her notepad, which she scribbles in furiously, her tongue out as she works. She's a quiet woman who is absorbed in her work.
Hey, Jamesons! The wife made some delicious brownies the other night, and I knew I just had to bring 'em over.
Great, come right on in, Al.
Hiya there, James. Fancy looking decorations around here, eh?
John tips his dusty hat, putting it on the hat rack after Albert joins the living room party. This doesn't help much, as his duster is quite dusty anyway. He likes to think of himself as an old-timey sheriff.
Betty worked hard to spiff up the house, and my, it's quite a sight. Keep dripping on this here pumpkin, though. It's like she's trying to kill me.
He nudges a jack-o'-lantern away with his foot and joins the living room with the Normans. The living room is filled with the sound of laughter.
And that was how I won at the Scrabble against the kiddos 3 times in a row.
Can't seem to beat me though, hun.
She nudges her husband, chuckling. Even though they often argue about her name, it's obvious the two love each other. The neighbors have taken their seats around the room, while the does are sitting on the floor, even though there are still seats left. They're staring off into space, not really paying attention to anything that is going on.
Well, you're the household champ, dear. Have to give myself a chance.
The room erupts in laughter once more as another knock erupts from the door. James goes to the door once more, for the last time this night. When he opens it, Donald Prescott is standing there, along with his wife Linda. Donald has brought a large, expensive-looking tiramisu cake, while Linda has brought absolutely nothing. She's wearing a large fur coat, smoking a cigarette from a fancy holder, and her blonde hair is up in a neat bun.
Ah, ha, ha, ha! Hello there, James. It's a pleasure to see you. I heard there was a party going on, and I couldn't resist showing up, especially to one of yours.
Oh. Hiya, Donald.
James reluctantly holds the door open wider and steps aside, giving silent permission to enter his home. Donald doesn't mind the lack of words of welcome and steps inside. Linda, however, stays behind. Darling, I must insist I stay in the car for a while longer. This Baroque masterpiece has entranced me. I simply can't leave Handel's symphony unfinished.
Well, you know what they say, sugar lumps. If it isn't Baroque, don't fix it. Ah, ha, ha, ha!
Well, now that everyone is here, let's begin the festivities.
James heads back into the living room to switch on a small radio, which is playing the Monster Mash song on loop. It's the cheesiest thing to play at a party like this, but nobody seems to mind.
I'll bring in the main course.
Betty leaves to go into the kitchen. All right, maybe one person minds the Monster Mash.
Oh, dinner time, eh? I better go freshen up.
8 interior, the Jameson bathroom. James walks into the bathroom to freshen up. The light bulb is flickering and obviously is on the last minutes of its life. James turns on the sink and puts on some extra dad brand cologne. He begins to wash his hands, thinking to himself,
Why in the world did Donald have to show up? Does he just want to make my life miserable? I guess I'll just have to live with it. The party won't take long. It'll go away.
James's hand washing becomes more intense as he stews over Donald's presence at his party. However, his hand washing stops when the light goes out. He groans and angrily tries to replace the bulb using a box of light bulbs that's in the cabinet before realizing he can't hear the radio either. He turns off the faucet. This isn't just a faulty bulb. 9 interior, the Jameson hallway. James, grumbling, heads towards the door to the basement to see if he can fiddle with the fuses. However, he doesn't need to complete his journey, as the lights come back on. That is the good news. The bad news is that he hears a loud scream come from the direction of the living room. He darts into the room and stares in horror at the sight of...
Attention all Hedgehog viewers, I'm Doug Catman. James Jameson is in huge trouble and he needs your help to find out what's going on in the living room. He's going to need a couple of bottles of squirt and a golden minivan. To give him this, all he needs is your credit card number, the 3 digits on the back, and the expiration month and year. But you gotta be quick, or James will be murdered and won't achieve that epic victory royale. Oh God. I'm bleeding out. Please, I need to call a hospital. But I don't have money to pay my bills. All I need is your...
Hiya, folks! Viewer mail time again! So, this is a letter from... Okay, wait, why don't we have any mail?
We, kind of forgot to ask for the viewer questions.
Oh, for the love of... Seriously, you had the entirety of clearance sale to ask for questions, and you have nothing?
Well, we have one letter.
Anything at this point.
Alright then.
Okay, folks, this letter comes to us from Tammy. Dear homeless man, Tammy went to college. Tammy learned how to ride human marshmallows.
10 interior, the Jameson living room, but with a dead body in it.
Oh my God, Albert is dead.
His hands fly to his face in horror. Albert is sitting on the couch, eyes closed. At James's shouting, however, they open.
Nah, I was just taking a nap. I'm fine.
It turns out that the figure next to him is what terrified the partygoers. Albert turns to face Todd, and his eyes widen in horror. Todd is slumped on the armrest of the couch, a knife in his chest, with strangely solid blood attached to his shirt around the wound. He's not moving. The room is silent for a few moments. Monster Mash playing in the background as the radio comes back to life, before they all burst into loud sobs. James is mortified, getting on his knees to caress his neighbor's still very warm hand. He can't muster a single word. Donald walks up to their late neighbor, gently bringing his eyelids down in a gesture of respect. He bows his head in quiet anger.
This poor man. We'll find out who did this to you, Todd.
Betty walks in, holding a giant roast.
Who's hungry?
She then notices the change in atmosphere. She takes a look at Laurel, who has collapsed on the ground in hysteric sobs, and takes a look at Todd. She drops the roast onto the ground and covers her mouth as she attempts not to vomit. This makes James cry harder.
That was a perfectly good roast.
Now everybody stay calm, eh? We need to look over the evidence.
John proceeds to look over the evidence.
Yeah, Todd's dead, eh? It had to be one of us, I betcha. There's no way it couldn't have been. We would have heard someone enter in the house, and they sure as hell couldn't have walked out of here, could they, eh?
John scans the room, a hand on his holster. Bob and Sayori stare at him blankly, a hint of terror in their expressions, while Albert moves away from the couch so he doesn't have to sit next to a dead body. Everyone stands up, except for the Does, who keep sitting right where they are. Laurel runs up to her husband and buries her face into his arms, still sobbing hysterically. She has no words, only tears. Carol slowly writes in her notepad, desensitized to the whole situation quite quickly. She's probably very eager to get this story out to the public when the night is through.
Well, it couldn't have been Albert. He was asleep.
Yep, couldn't have been me. I was asleep.
Think what we need is a polygraph. I parked out back. Always good to have one for the occasion, eh? Donald, I want you to come with me. With your muscle and my gun, if the bastard comes to attack us, they'll be outmatched, I betcha. I'll call backup too, though that might be hard to do with everyone looking for that child killer and all.
Donald nods in agreement, and the two walk out of the room towards the back of the home, through the kitchen. The remaining 6 neighbors stick together in the living room, trying to stay calm. The lights go out again, shocking the group. This time, they hear a loud gunshot before the lights come back on. 11 interior, the Jameson kitchen. The neighbors make their way to the kitchen to see Donald Prescott nowhere to be found and John Norman holding his radio with one hand while his second hand is resting on the floor near his hip. The 7 neighbors all dramatically gasp, but Carol, the newest victim's wife, is still writing in her notepad.
Donald Prescott. I knew he was the one behind this. You just know who's going to end up killing your neighbors by how they act. John Norman's hand is currently on his radio, located on his coat. It is possible he was attempting to call the police station for reinforcements.
The neighbors have all left their tears with Todd. Right now, they're far too worried about their own lives to grieve.
When will the killing stop? Who's doing this?
Look, we need to leave the house. Staying here is a mistake. We're all just gonna keep dying if we don't leave. We're in a small house with a killer on the loose. That is a bad idea.
Yeah, that's one of the dumbest ideas you've ever had, honey.
Well, why?
The rest of the group shrugs, but Albert, who's trying to see if there was anything in the fridge, makes a loud
Hey!
to get their attention.
Did you find something?
I think so. 2 of these knives are missing.
The neighbors look over and see he's telling the truth. The knife holder near the fridge indeed has 2 holes where knives would go. Carol writes this detail down in her notepad.
So Donald is armed. Great. As if his muscles aren't enough.
Maybe that was where the knife that killed Todd came from. The question of the other knife remains, though, eh? Everyone looks at the quiet woman, shocked she isn't completely mute. The lights go out again, and everyone knows what this means. They stay quiet, hoping nobody will hear where they are. However, there's a man that can easily be found despite this. Albert. He begins to give out muffled screams as he's dragged out of the room.
Leave him alone!
Laurel tries to leave the room to follow the noises only to trip on Bob's foot, landing on the corpse of John. She lets out a piercing shriek, and the rest of the neighbors go over to help her back to her feet. The lights turn back on, and the remaining neighbors look for where Albert could be, scrambling over each other to get to the living room. 12 interior, the Jameson living room, but now with 2 dead bodies. The Monster Mash is still playing on loop. Albert's body is stuffed in the family fireplace while Betty is trying to get him out, but with no luck. Albert has no marks on him, but he's definitely dead.
No weapon marks. He must have been killed barehanded. However, they didn't do a good job at hiding the body.
Speaking of weapons, Carol points at Todd. That's all she has to say, as the neighbors realize that the knife that was in Todd is noticeably gone from his bloodless chest. Noises come from upstairs.
Oh, for the love of God, there's something upstairs.
Everybody, don't leave until I call you up.
James snaps into action. He isn't going to let more blood spill onto his freshly cleaned carpets. He runs out of the scene, coming back with a gun that he took from John's holster in the kitchen. He runs upstairs. The killer, however, is already there to greet him. 13 interior, the Jameson upstairs. Or at least, what's left of him. Donald Prescott is laying on the ground. He isn't moving. James pulls out the gun, and despite the fact that Donald is probably dead, shoots him anyway. Donald still doesn't move.
Guys, come in here.
The neighbors downstairs seem to be talking quietly as they shuffle upstairs. Bob and Sayori are at the front of the group, as silent as ever, just staring at Donald's body as they walk towards it. They then fall quietly down to the ground, knives dug into their back. James looks at the sight with horror, and his eyes dart to the remaining 3 members of the group, who look just as frightened at the sight of the corpses. It's clear one of them has to be the killer. James holds the gun forward, aiming at them.
All right, there's only going to be 1 more death tonight. Which one of you is it? Is it you, Carol? What's in that notepad you keep writing in, huh? I bet it's your murderous plan, ain't it? Ain't it, Carol?
What? No!
Show me the damn notebook. Throw it here, slowly.
Carol slowly throws the notebook to James, who catches it with his available hand. He begins to look through it, bringing down the gun to do so, but still looking at the wives just in case they try anything. Inside the notebook is a list of suspects with evidence which could make them the killer. The names of the deceased are crossed off. He throws the notebook back and aims the gun at Laurel Swanson.
All right, and you have to be the killer. The hysterical speech, you sound just like a bad actress. I can't believe you would kill your own husband over Scrabble.
What?
No, it couldn't have been you. But that means...
He turns the gun to his own wife, Betty.
Betty, honey, I can't believe you did all this.
James looks at Betty, a look of betrayal in his eyes. Betty nods rapidly, but James doesn't notice.
Nah, couldn't have been you. I know who the real killer has to be.
James points the gun to the body of Donald Prescott.
It's Donald. It just has to be.
Honey, Donald is dead.
So the question is, who would want to kill Donald?
James holds the gun to his own temple, causing everyone in the room to gasp in surprise.
The only one with the desire to kill Donald Prescott. It must have been me all along. You traitorous bastard!
Betty rolls her eyes. She sighs in annoyance and shakes her head.
Oh, for the love of God. It wasn't you, James. You almost had the answer, but you just skipped over it. It was me. I did it. I was in the kitchen before Todd was stabbed and used the kitchen knife from there to do it. I left the group in the living room when John and Donald left. I killed Albert to hide the fact he was starting to figure it out, and then stabbed both Bob and Sayori because they're too silent and disturbing to not really be hiding knowledge of what I did.
But why?
Sayori and Bob get back up onto their feet.
Because it is a spooky party. Oh my God. You zombies! Zombies! Oh, the humanity!
James is absolutely horrified and oblivious to what is going on. He proceeds to drop the gun, which goes off on Donald when it hits the floor, and runs down the stairs and out of the house, screaming hysterically as he sprints down the road.
He really didn't figure it out, did he?
Todd, John, and Albert all come up the stairs. Donald begins to examine his bullet wounds.
Well, hey there, Donald. Why are you still down there? You know the gun was loaded with blanks, right?
Wait, I was supposed to load him with blanks? Oh, sorry there, Donald. They must have missed the memo.
Ha! Ha ha! Someone please call me an ambulance.
Okay, you are an ambulance.
Ha, 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 ha. I am glad you inherited our male parental figure's humor.
And I am glad you inherited our female parental figure's personality. I am very attracted to you.
I'll do it.
Laurel goes downstairs to dial an ambulance, partially to avoid having to be near the Doe couple's exchange of affection.
Being stuffed in that chimney wasn't fun. No. Couldn't you have fit me in a better location?
Maybe if you lost a couple pounds, Al.
Fair enough.
So, when is your companion returning to the home?
It'll be a few days. I'd say when his soap opera is back on. He's an idiot, so he might even forget what happened tonight in a few hours anyway.
I'd check the lights if I were you. Turning off the power all those times might have messed something up.
I'll do that later. Anyway, you should all probably go back home. I'll deal with the idiot when he comes back.
The neighbors all leave, except Donald, who is still groaning in pain. Epilogue.
And so, James did, in fact, come home after a few days. But it took a while for him to look at any of his neighbors or his own wife in the face. Still recovering from the initial idea that they were all either killers or zombies or killer zombies, Donald Prescott thankfully survived his injuries. And it didn't take long for him to be discharged from the hospital and get back to his home. He was too kind a man to keep any hard feelings towards James, and he even apologized to the best of his ability for frightening him. There may have been a killer on the loose in town, but there certainly wasn't one on William Street. Yet.
You nailed it, James.
Was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. A monster from his lab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise,
Did the mash.
He did the monster mash.
The Monster Mash!
It was a graveyard smash!
He did the mash!
Caught on in a flash, eh?
He did the mash!
From my laboratory in the castle east to the master bedroom where the vampires feast, the ghouls all came from their humble abodes to get a jolt from my electro. They did the mash.
He did the monster mash!
The monster mash!
It was a graveyard smash!
They did the mash!
Caught on in a flash, eh?
They did the mash!
The zombies are having fun. The party has just begun. The guests included Marcel, Ramus, and his son. The scene is rockin', all are digging the sounds. Mr. Pull on Chains backed by his baying hounds. The Coffin Bangers are about to arrive. With their vocal group, the Crypt Kicker 5. Back to you,
They
Tom!
played the mash.
They played the monster mash. The monster mash!
It was a graveyard smash!
They did the mash!
Caught on in a flash, eh?
They played the mash!
Out from his coffin, Marcel's voice did ring. Seems he was troubled by just one thing. He opened the lid and shook his fist. Whatever happened to my Transylvania twist?
It's now the mash.
He did the monster mash.
The monster mash!
It was a graveyard smash!
It's now the mash.
Caught on in a flash, eh?
It's now the mash!
Now everything's cool. Marcel's part of the band.
And my monster mash is the hit of the land.
For you, the living, this smash was meant to.
When you get to my door, tell them Vincent sent you.
Then you can mash.
Then you can monster mash.
The monster mash!
It was a graveyard smash!
Then you can mash.
Caught on in a flash, eh?
Then you can like mash!
Then you can monster mash!
Hey, whoa, 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 whoa. You two took up the past 2 Jameson slots for your clearance sale episodes. You aren't scheduled back for another season. Get out of here. Go on, get.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know, sorry.
Oh my god! Gag me with a spoon! We are like